So to review from last time, we practiced the value scales. You notice I'm not trying to look for exact precision as long as it goes from dark to light. Because I know this paper is not the best. But I did try to clean up so you see a little bit of yellow to the red, so you can see the orange mix in the middle. Cool. So once you're done with this and you've had a little practice, go ahead and take this. And you don't need it. What you do need, though, are some materials. So first, you need lesson 3 from week 6, where you should have done 2 hands overlapping, 2 faces, people overlapping, to get this mess of spaghetti. If you just have like, I saw a couple where it's like, oh, here's a hand, and then here's a person, and then you have like a hand, and then a person, and there's nothing overlapping. Just go ahead and do, another blind contour drawing that overlaps and connects them all together. Obviously, I'm showing you like the sloppiest, fastest way possible. But you need to make sure that you have built up this spaghetti of lines, because we're going to be talking about shape. Shape is any area defined by a line. So a circle, 1 line, square, 4 lines. Organic shapes are shapes that are everything but mathematical ones. So like this weird shape in here, or this little weird tennis ball looking shape. This will act as kind of like our first little practice getting used to just using our tools, which are paint brushes and paint. So once you have your lesson 3, it's all good to go. You've outlined it with markers. Take an eraser. I don't remember if I gave the painting kids the pink ones or the white ones, but whatever. Take your eraser and kind of erase those pencil marks that you had before, cleaned up. So all you're left with are those nice, crispy, clean marker lines. Cool. I'm just going to arrange it this way. Sure, that seems to make sense. You will need your primary colors, the palette you used from last time, and all of the paint brushes. Let me tell you why. The reason we need all of them is because, 1, this project is kind of a way for you to just kind of test out the tools you have at your disposal. So if you notice, some of these brushes are flat tips. Sometimes called square, sometimes called chisel. Then you have your round tip or rounded brush. And then you just have your regular fine tip conical brush. The reason I still need all of them is because if you look, some of these shapes in here are really teeny tiny. So if I tried to paint this right here, it would not go well for me. So I might use these smaller brushes, like my 2 or my 3, or if I want to go even smaller, my 0.2, which is somewhere around here I don't see. But 0.2 is the smallest brush you guys have. It's a 0/2 or 0/2. When the brushes get real small, the numbers get real weird. Like the smallest brushes are like 0s and double 0s and triple 0s, and it just gets weird. So to complete this project, we're going to need to also look at positive and negative space. Remember, space, from when you did your elements and principles notes, is 2 kinds of space: positive space, negative space. Positive space being the space in the object. So if we look at this brush, right, the shape, this brush, this is our positive space. Whereas negative space is the space around the object. Here in our drawings, it's a bit weird because there's no real definable object, right? We overlap 4 of them. So just kind of in your head, kind of think about, okay, if I were to just kind of outline all of this, then this right here would be my negative space. We're going to try to not paint in the negative space and only paint in the positive space. All these little shapes, trust me, you're gonna have enough you can paint all day. Another reason I want you to only use your primary colors is I want you to get used to mixing paints to get your own colors. So step one, you're going to need to make sure that you put gradations in about 70%, 75% of the shapes. What that's going to look like, grab this brush here, a little bigger. Let's say I'm going to do some red. I'm going to pull some red off my palette, make a little puddle, 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 puddle. And again, this is that thin white paper. It'll accept the paint a little bit better than the sketchbook paper, but honestly not by a lot. So again, it's imperative that you use water, because this is watercolor, but not so much water that you're trying to drown your painting. All right, so I got my pigment set up. Now I'm gonna use the water to pull out that pigment and create that gradation. There we go. Now, with watercolors, it's kind of weird because when it's wet, it looks darker and will look different. But I promise that will be a gradation. Cool. And then I could take this same, and I'll keep using this red while I got this nice puddle going. And I'm going to go along and fill in some of these shapes with gradations. Let's say I get tired of doing yellow and blue, and I want some orange. Then I'm just going to take my palette. I'm going to make a yellow puddle and a red puddle. OMG, now I've got some orange. Let's do this one down here. Yes, I am very aware that I gave you a painting package with like, was it 24 colors? Cool, we'll use those, don't worry. But right now, I need you to learn and show me that you have the skills to be able to mix colors, like the most basic skill in painting. If I wanted to get purple, I would do red. And blue. Pretty decent purple. First, I wasn't a big fan of these paints, but I think they're going to be okay. Because for some reason, usually the class pack I buy, which is like the decent stuff, they don't sell them anymore, which was super lame. All right. So thanks, COVID. So as you can see, I'm just starting to build up gradations with all these shapes. So like I said, we're shooting for about 70%. So don't give me like 5 and call it a day. 70% of the page, so 80% of the page should be filled with your lines. 70% should be filled with colors. If that's confusing, I'm going to make sure you get a good grade. I will also attach a rubric to this lesson so you can see. Hopefully, Thursday, Friday, I'll post a finished version of this. I try not to post what it should look like at the end until it's close to the end because I don't want you guys to steal my ideas because I want you to problem solve and think about it yourself. So like I said, just go ahead. Let's do some blue. I'll show you one more thing. Let me do this blue one first. Cool. All right, so now you're probably thinking, but some of these are so small, I don't know what to do. So I'm going to take my smallest brush here, which is my 2/0. And it's literally the same concept. So let me zoom in. See, I got these mess of small shapes here. Like, I could probably paint this area here. Easy peasy, no problem. Put my pigment down. Get some water. Notice how it took me like a couple seconds. It just uses the focus to pay attention, which is hard. Once you get the zone, it's very meditative. It's pretty dope. All right, so now look at these little guys. That would be pointless to paint this one little shape, right? So what I'm going to do is kind of think, okay, I could, though, paint this area. So I'm going to pull some of that red paint out. I'm just going to say, well, this area right here is the shape. So I'm not going to expect you guys to be painting shapes that are like so tiny that your wrists break. So let's say no bigger than like, you know, like a pea, but that size. So like this area right here is a bunch of little shapes. So what I can do is just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to make a decision. I'm going to problem solve this artistic problem here and say that this whole thing is a shape. Last pro tip, and I'm going to leave you to do your work. There's one thing you've noticed. I didn't paint shapes that were next to each other. But all of a sudden, what has happened here on this shape that I've painted next to this yellow one, it's starting to bleed together and it's going to look sloppy. So make sure when you're doing this, you do your shapes. Don't do wet colors next to wet colors. If anything, give it like a minute or two, let it dry, and then do the ones next to them. Good luck. Again, 70% of these shapes need to be full of color and gradation. This is not a coloring book. Please don't just grab some paint and color a shape. It needs to be gradated. We are practicing how to increase pigment and how to increase water and decrease pigment with watercolor. This is like the foundational skill. So please don't be lazy on this one. Please, you gotta try, you gotta develop those hand skills. On that note, have a good rest of the week and have fun.